In our previous video, we tackled the nav and the alert at the top of the page. Now we're going to tidy up the rest of the loose ends. What we want to look at first is our quotes and our features, and particularly the headings, because they're not particularly attractive at the moment. What we'd like to do is adjust the margins for these. So I'm going to try that just in the developer tools to see what might be appropriate to push the page down a little bit, how much spacing I want. And I also want to have these headings centered. So the first thing that I'm going to do, though, is to switch the top margin off and the bottom margin off on our heading. So I'm going to create another class and call it page header. First of all, I'm going to set the margin bottom to 0, the bottom border to 0, and I'm going to center the text. I'm then going to target my H2s, which is each of the headers, and set the margin top to 0. And finally, in each of my sections back in the HTML file, I'm going to take off the my5 class, which was giving us our vertical spacing before, and switch that for my page header. I'll do that for the quotes, and I'll do the same for the features. Now initially, this is all going to look a little bit cramped. So don't worry about that, we'll come to that. As we saw in our preview, what we want to have then is our divider underneath each header. And we're going to use our short divider class for that. So we'll use a HR, give it the class of block divider, and block divider short. When I refresh the page, we can see that there's some space, but my divider isn't appearing. If I look in developer tools, I can see that it's there. The reason for this is that we didn't actually give a default background color for our divider. So I'm just going to set one here. Use 444, which will give me kind of a gray color. That's looking a bit nicer. The next thing that I want to do then now is to actually start providing a little bit more vertical space. So to do that, I'm going to create another section. I'm going to call it Content Containers. And in there, I'm going to create a content container and give that a padding top of 75 pixels and a padding bottom of 75 pixels. You might remember when we were experimenting in developer tools, 75 pixels was what seemed to look about the best. And now for my quotes container and my features container, I'll add that. Actually, I didn't add the default Bootstrap container there to features. Let me do that now. And then add the content container class. When I save that and refresh the page, then this is a lot nicer. We're starting to get a bit more vertical space. And that looks quite nice. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is to create some container wrappers. And I'm going to create a default container wrapper. And then I'm going to create one called Container Wrapper Red, which is going to give us the red background for our features section. And so that all my colors tie in together, I'm going to scroll down and grab the color that I used for the button. So when I go to button red, I'll take that color, paste that in there to my background, and I'm also going to set the font color to white. Okay, and then on my quotes, I'll add my empty container wrapper. It's handy just to add this to both, because if I wanted to do some styling of the quotes in future, changing the background or something like that, then I could do that nicely and easily. And now I'll add those two classes, Container Wrapper and Container Wrapper Red, to features. Take the div out and paste it in at the end, and Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B to handle the indents. Okay, now when I refresh, everything is starting to look a bit nicer. We have our colors in place and they all tie in together. Okay, so we can carry on working on the features now. What I want is another block divider, but this time I want a white block divider. So let's add in our horizontal rule with the class of block divider short, and block divider white. And then we can go back to our CSS and create our block divider white class. So let's go to our block divider section. Underneath orange, we'll create a new one. We'll call it block divider white. And this time we'll just give that the background color of white. I also want to have my text centered in the features, and I think I'd like to add a little bit of margin at the bottom just to enhance the vertical space. So for feature, what I'm going to do then is give the text a line of center and the margin bottom of 40 pixels. And you might remember that in our features, each individual feature has this feature class, as we can see here. Okay, so when I refresh that, we have our block divider. We have a bit of extra space at the bottom. Things are starting to look quite nice. I do want to change the icons though. I'd like them to be a little bit bigger, and I would like them to appear on a line on their own. So that's quite straightforward to do. What we're going to do is target the I element inside the feature class. We'll set a bottom margin of 20 pixels, a font size of 45 pixels, and a line height of 45 pixels as well. How do we get them displaying each one individually on their own line? Well, that's quite easy with Bootstrap 4. As you can see that when we're displaying them with the DSM inline class. If we just change that to the DSM block, then each icon will appear on its own line. And the fact that we've given it a larger font size and a larger line height means that they're really a bit more eye-catching. Okay, so we're nearly done with our features and our quotes section. There's just a few more things that I'd like to add. I'd like the buttons at the bottom of the features to match our sign up button in terms of style. So let's go down to the bottom of our CSS. I'm going to target the button class inside feature. I want the button to be white, so I'm going to give it a background color of white. We'll set the border color as well, because that will be set by Bootstrap otherwise. We'll give a border radius of 15 pixels just to give the corners a little bit of a nice rounded appearance. We'll set a minimum width so that the buttons can grow but not shrink. The font will be bold. A little bit of margin just to push them down from the content above them. And then finally, our font color is going to be our favorite red color that we've been using throughout this page. So when I save that, refresh the page again, then we can see that our buttons now look a lot nicer. They match the style of our page. Finally, I just want to add a little bit more vertical spacing between the heading and the actual quotes, just to make it look a little bit nicer. So I'm going to go back up to my page headings section, and we'll target quotes and page header. I don't want to do this on the features, I only want to do it on the quotes. And I'm just going to push down the margin a little bit there, give it a bottom margin of 25 pixels. And that looks good. We have nice vertical spacing. Everything stands out and is quite nicely eye-catching. And our page looks very good indeed. So there we have it. I think our site is pretty much ready to go. The last thing we then need to do is obviously commit everything to Git and push it. But we've gone through a huge amount of changes in our last 3 videos. So you probably want to go back through them at a much slower pace and see what's happening from step to step. On top of that, take a look at the code on GitHub and have a look at just the CSS file and also the HTML to see how we've gone from our previous unstyled Bootstrap example to the fully featured finished product. Now, this is not perfect, and these 3 videos were not meant to be perfect. The CSS file itself could probably use some tidying up. It's always a bit difficult to add your own styles on top of a library because you have to conform to how the library wants to do things. So generally, try to keep your CSS as clean as possible and as sensible as possible. This brings us to the end of Bootstrap 4. Hopefully you've learned a good bit along the way. And now we have a new, beautifully styled landing page ready to go for our new Whiskey Drop service.